My girlfriend called me ugly in front of her friends and dumped me at a restaurant, leaving me to pay for the dinner. As she walked away, she loudly said, "A guy like you should be grateful I even dated you." I smiled and calmly waited. This morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls. You guys, I'm still processing what happened last weekend. I keep replaying it in my head and wondering if I somehow imagine the whole thing. But nope. My maxed out credit card and the ice cream stains on my couch confirm it was very real. For context, I had been with Rachel for 2 years. 2 years. Not some casual fling or whatever. We had the whole routine down. Netflix marathons on Sundays, awkward holiday dinners with both families, even that weird couples yoga class she insisted on trying, which we both sucked at, TBH. Things weren't perfect between us, are they ever? But I thought we were solid. We had talked about maybe moving in together this summer. She had these little annoying habits, leaving her socks literally everywhere, texting during movies, and making these helpful comments about my appearance. Stuff like, "That shirt makes your arms look bigger," or "Have you thought about trying a different hairstyle?" I always brushed it off as her being honest. Pass me with such a doormat. So last Friday, Rachel texted me about this dinner with some work friends. She's never really included me in her work life before, always saying it wasn't professional or whatever. So I was actually excited. I even went shopping for a new outfit, RIP my budget, and spent forever getting ready. I'm talking full YouTube grooming tutorial, the fancy hair products I only use for special occasions, the works. I get to the super expensive restaurant downtown, the kind with tiny portions and no prices on the menu. Red flag number 1. Rachel's already there with 2 girls she works with, Leona and Paula. The moment I walk up, there's this weird vibe. Rachel barely acknowledges me. Just this half stand from her chair and a quick "You're late." I was literally 2 minutes late because parking was impossible. I sit down and she looks at my outfit and goes, "Oh, you wore that?" Not quietly either. Her friends exchange this look, and I immediately feel my face getting hot. For the record, I was wearing a dark blue button-up that I thought looked nice, nothing crazy or inappropriate. I try to laugh it off, is there a dress code I missed? But she just shrugs and says they already ordered appetizers. Cool. The next hour is basically Rachel talking about work stuff I don't understand while her friends nod along. Whenever I try to join the conversation, Rachel either talks over me or explains why I'm wrong about whatever I just said. At one point, I mentioned something about a customer at my store, and Rachel interrupts with, "He doesn't really get how things work in the real business world," with this dismissive wave, like retail isn't a real job. I've been a manager for 3 years. I'm sitting there getting more uncomfortable, wondering if Rachel's always been this condescending and I just never noticed, or if she's showing off for her friends. Either way, not a great look. Then Leona asks how we met, and I start telling the story about how her coworker Victor is my best friend and introduced us. Rachel cuts me off mid-sentence and says, "Yeah. Victor felt bad for him. I was doing a favor, really." Then, laughs. You guys. My stomach literally dropped. That's not even close to how it happened. Victor had actually warned me about Rachel's ego before setting us up, but said she was a good girl underneath it all. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. I excuse myself to the bathroom, mostly so I don't cry in front of them. I'm in the stall texting Victor "UTF is happening?" When I get a notification that Rachel just tagged herself at this restaurant on Instagram with girls' night out, I'm not even there. Victor calls me immediately, but I send him to voicemail because I don't want the girls to hear me crying. I splash some water on my face, fix myself up, and give myself this sad little pep talk in the mirror about getting through dinner with dignity. When I get back to the table, they're all laughing about something, but stop abruptly when I sit down. Awesome. The waiter brings our main courses, and Rachel keeps making these jokes about my food choice. I ordered pasta, one of the less expensive options because I was already worried about the bill, and she keeps saying stuff like carb loading for a marathon, and that's a bold choice for someone with your body type. Each comment feels like a little paper cut, and they're adding up fast. At this point, I'm barely eating. Just pushing food around my plate and counting the minutes until I can leave. Then Paula asks Rachel about some presentation, and Rachel launches into this whole story about how her boss loved her ideas, and she's basically running the whole project now. Something clicks in my brain. The week before, Rachel had been stressing about this same presentation, saying her portion was only 5 minutes, and she was nervous. Now suddenly, she's the star? It's like she's living in some alternate universe where she's the main character. Then the bill comes. The waiter sets it on the table, and Rachel picks it up, looks at it for a second, then slides it over to me. I think she's just showing me the total. But then she says, and I will never forget this. "You know what? I don't think this is working." I stare at her, waiting for the punchline. There isn't one. "I've been trying to make this work, but I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should break up." In the middle of a restaurant. In front of her friends. After 2 years together, who does that? I'm completely blindsided. Are you serious right now? This is how you want to do this? She stands up, grabs her jacket, and says, I still get a knot in my stomach thinking about it. A guy like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize. Then she and her friends just left. They all walked out together laughing, leaving me sitting there with a $347 bill for all their stupid Wagyu appetizers and fancy cocktails. The waiter came over with this look of pity that made everything 1,000 times worse. I paid the bill with my credit card, which I'm still paying off from Christmas, yay, and somehow made it to my car without completely falling apart. I called Victor from the parking lot sobbing so hard he couldn't understand me at first. He came straight to my apartment with a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bottle of wine, the real MVP. Between ugly crying and stress eating cookie dough, I told him everything. He was livid. I had to talk him out of driving to Rachel's place and causing a scene. That's when he got weird. He kept asking questions about what Rachel had said about work, projects she mentioned, her role in the company. Finally, he was like, Sebastian, I don't know how to tell you this, but Rachel isn't who she says she is at work. Turns out, Rachel isn't some hotshot marketing girl about to get promoted. She's an assistant who makes coffee runs and schedules meetings. All those business trips? Complete fabrications. The big presentation? She was just doing the slides for the actual team. The fancy title on her LinkedIn? Total fiction. I felt like such an idiot. For 2 years, this girl had been lying about basically everything, and I never questioned it. What else had she been lying about? That night after Victor left, I went into full detective mode. I scrolled back through our text history, our photos, everything. So many inconsistencies I'd missed. Comments about money that didn't add up. Times she had to work late, but her location showed her across town. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that moment in the restaurant, how small she made me feel, how humiliated I was. At 3 a.m., I get a text from a number I don't recognize. Hey. It's Chloe from Rachel's office. Victor gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know. That's when things got really interesting. First update. First, thank you all so much for the supportive comments on my last post. I literally cried reading some of them in a good way. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's what happened next in this absolutely wild situation. So after finding out from Chloe, who works with Rachel, that my girlfriend of 2 years had basically been living in a fantasy world of her own creation, I spent the next few days in that gross post-breakup fog. You know the one, where you're alternating between crying into a pint of ice cream and angrily scrolling through old photos wondering if any of it was real. My apartment looked like a disaster zone. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere, and approximately 7 empty DoorDash bags because cooking felt impossible. The worst part was that I kept having these moments where I'd think of something funny to text Rachel, then remember what happened, and it was like being dumped all over again. My brain was literally stuck in a loop of, did that actually happen? And how did I not see this coming? I'd also been avoiding social media because I just knew Rachel would post something annoying. But Wednesday morning, I finally caved and checked Instagram. Sure enough, there was Rachel with some gym selfie captioned, "Level up, know your worth, the audacity." I nearly threw my phone across the room. Victor came over that evening with takeout and found me wrapped in my comforter like a sad burrito. He's been amazing through this whole thing, making sure I eat actual food, listening to me rant about the same things over and over, and not once saying I told you so, even though he had his suspicions about Rachel from the beginning. While we were eating, Victor showed me his texts with Chloe. Apparently, they'd been talking a lot, and she had tea to spill. According to Chloe, Rachel had been telling everyone at work that she dumped me because I was clingy and always talking about marriage. What? I was not the one who made a Pinterest board called Future Home Ideas. Yes. Rachel actually had one of these, which she claimed was research for some work project. Then Chloe dropped the real bombshell. Rachel wasn't just lying about her job title. She was currently on probation for taking credit for other people's work and might actually get fired soon. All those late nights working, she was frantically trying to fix mistakes before anyone noticed. Those business trips, complete fiction. I was still processing all this when my phone rang. It was Tom, Rachel's dad. I almost didn't answer, awkward, but figured I should be an adult about this. Tom has always been super sweet to me. Remembers my birthday and actually asks questions about my life, kind of sweet. He sounded concerned and asked if everything was okay between me and Rachel. Apparently, she told her family we had a little fight, but everything was fine. A little fight? The woman publicly humiliated me, dumped me in front of her friends, and stuck me with a massive bill. I tried to keep it vague, saying we were taking some space because I didn't want to put him in the middle. Then he mentioned Rachel's birthday dinner on Saturday and how the whole family was looking forward to seeing me there. You guys. I nearly choked on my lemonade. Rachel had told her family we were still together and that I was coming to her birthday dinner. The dinner was at her parents' house, and apparently, she'd told them we had big news to share. After hanging up, I sat there in shock while Victor looked at me like I'd grown a second head. He was like, is she delusional or just a pathological liar? Honestly, I was wondering the same thing. That's when we came up with a plan. I wasn't going to just ghost her family. They'd always been kind to me, and they deserved to know what kind of person Rachel really was. But I also wasn't going to cause a scene or be vindictive. I would simply attend the dinner as invited and let the truth come out naturally. The next day, Chloe met me for coffee, slightly awkward since we'd only met through Rachel, but she turned out to be really chill. She confirmed everything and added even more details about Rachel's work lies. The team Rachel claimed to lead was actually just her and 2 interns. The big presentation she was in charge of last month? She was just operating the slideshow while her boss presented. Chloe seemed genuinely upset on my behalf, saying she'd always thought Rachel's stories about me seemed off. Apparently, Rachel would come to work complaining that I was high maintenance, when in reality, I was paying for most of our dates toward the end because Rachel claimed to be between paychecks, which I now realized probably meant she was terrible with money. Midway through our conversation, Chloe got a text from their boss asking if she could come in Saturday evening to help with some emergency project. Chloe was bummed because she'd had plans, but then I had an idea. What if Chloe needed to drop something off at Rachel's parents' house during the birthday dinner? The timing would be perfect. As we were figuring out the details, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, first one since the restaurant disaster. It just said, "We need to talk about what happened." I might have overreacted. Might have? I showed Chloe, and she nearly spit out her coffee. Overreacted is when you get annoyed about someone being late, not when you publicly humiliate your boyfriend of 2 years and stick him with a $300 bill. I didn't respond. Let her sweat. The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. I wasn't going to this dinner unprepared. I dug through old texts, finding all the lies, dates when she claimed to be at work conferences that didn't exist, stories about coworkers that Chloe confirmed were fabricated, even photos Rachel had posted of herself at work events that were actually just downloaded from the company website. Friday night, Victor came over to help me pick an outfit. Not gonna lie, part of me wanted to show up looking amazing just to spite her, but we decided the best approach was to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard. We settled on a simple black button-down that Rachel once said made me look average, which now I realize was her weird neg attempt because I got compliments whenever I wore it. I barely slept Friday night. What if this backfired? What if her family took her side? What if I froze up and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, I had chewed my nails down to nothing and gone through about 17 different around noon. Rachel texted again, "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. We're something nice." My parents are excited. I didn't respond to that either. Let her think whatever she wanted. I spent the afternoon getting ready with a weird mix of dread and anticipation. Victor helped me with my hair and gave me a pep talk when I started to lose my nerve. At 5:30, I got in my car and headed to her parents' house. I had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. I sat there for a minute, doing those breathing exercises from that meditation app I downloaded months ago, but never actually used. What was I doing? Was this crazy? Maybe I should just block Rachel on everything and move on with my life like a normal person? But then I thought about her sitting there at her birthday dinner, probably telling everyone some fake version of our relationship, maybe even making herself the victim somehow, and my resolve hardened. I pulled up to her parents' house at 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would annoy Rachel. There were several cars already in the driveway. Looked like the whole family was there. I checked myself in the rearview mirror, took one last deep breath, and walked to the door. Rachel's mom opened it with a big smile and a hug, ushering me inside. The house smelled like Tom's famous pot roast, and for a second, I felt a pang of sadness. I genuinely liked Rachel's family, and this would probably be the last time I'd see them. I rounded the corner into the living room, and there was Rachel, drink in hand, mid-laugh at something her cousin said. She froze when she saw me, clearly not expecting me to actually show up despite what she'd told her family. The look on her face was, well, priceless tbh. For a split second, panic flashed across her features before she composed herself and came over with this fake smile. She gave me a stiff hug and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk privately." I just smiled and said loud enough for everyone to hear that I wouldn't miss her birthday for anything, especially since she'd been telling everyone we had big news to share. The color drained from her face. Tom clapped his hands excitedly and asked if this was what he thought it was. Rachel's brother gave me a knowing look. Her mom started joking about finally getting grandkids. Rachel gripped my elbow a little too tight and tried to steer me toward the hallway, but her dad called out that dinner was ready, and everyone needed to sit down. As we all took our seats around the dining table, with Rachel nervously watching my every move, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. On my way. 15 minutes out. Rachel leaned over and hissed, "What are you doing here?" I thought after the restaurant. I just smiled sweetly and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family about what happened at that restaurant, Rachel." I'm sure they'd love to hear that story. The look of absolute panic on her face as her dad started bringing out the food? Worth every second of anxiety it took to get there. Game on. Second update. I'm finally ready to share what happened at Rachel's birthday dinner. Sorry for the delay. I needed a mental health day after all this drama. Plus, my Wi-Fi has been acting up because my neighbor borrowed my password and apparently downloaded the entire internet. Where did we leave off? Right. Me sitting at the dinner table with Rachel's family while she panicked about what I might say. So there I was, surrounded by Rachel's family. Her parents Tom and Ruth, her brother Kyle, her grandpa, and two cousins whose names I always mix up. The table was loaded with Tom's famous pot roast, those buttery mashed potatoes I've literally dreamed about, and a fancy salad that nobody was going to eat but everyone would pretend to appreciate. The first 20 minutes were straight up awkward. Rachel kept trying to control the conversation while shooting me these warning glances. I just smiled and passed the bread rolls, enjoying the way her left eye twitched every time I opened my mouth. Petty? Maybe? Satisfying? Absolutely. Tom kept the conversation flowing. Bless him. He asked about my family, my job, the usual small talk. When he mentioned how proud they all were of Rachel's big promotion, I nearly choked on my water. I glanced at Rachel, whose face had gone the exact shade of the beets on the table. Rachel jumped in, talking about how her team was crushing their targets and how her boss was practically grooming her for senior management. I just nodded along, watching her dig herself deeper with each word. Ruth, who's always been the quiet type, suddenly asked Rachel about the Johnson account. Apparently, Rachel had been telling her mom about some huge deal she was supposedly leading. Rachel's answer was so vague, it could have been a horoscope. Something about strategic pivots and leveraging core competencies that literally meant nothing. Her brother Kyle caught my eye across the table. He's always been the skeptical one in the family, the type to Google facts during arguments and call people out on their BS. He raised an eyebrow at me like, is she for real right now? That's when Tom brought up the future. He asked us about our big news and whether it had anything to do with us taking the next step. Rachel nearly dropped her fork and mumbled something about it not being the right time to discuss it. Her grandpa, who has zero filter and is my absolute favorite person in her family, cuts in with, so are you two moving in together or what? Because Rachel said you were looking at apartments together. Again, news to me. The furthest we'd gotten in that conversation was me once saying, maybe we should think about combining our Netflix accounts to save money. Rachel tried steering the conversation back to herself, talking about how her boss had given her a company card for business expenses. I couldn't help myself. I asked what kind of expenses she was authorized to approve. She stammered something about client dinners and team outings. That's when I casually mentioned, oh, speaking of dinners, Rachel took me to this amazing restaurant last week. What was it called again, honey? The one where you met up with Leona and Paula? The color drained from her face faster than my phone battery on TikTok. Seriously, my phone can't handle more than 20 minutes of scrolling before dying. Anyone else? Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. Tom went to answer it, and I heard his delighted, "Oh, Chloe." What a surprise. Rachel looked like she might actually pass out. Chloe walked in with a folder, all professional, in her button-up shirt. She apologized for interrupting the birthday dinner, but said she had some work documents Rachel needed to sign urgently for Monday morning. Tom, being the perfect host, immediately invited her to join us for cake later. Rachel tried to usher Chloe toward the front door, but Ruth insisted they could handle work stuff right there at the table since we're all family here. Chloe sat down in the empty chair beside me, which I'd strategically saved NGL. Rachel was gripping her fork so hard I thought it might bend. That's when Ruth asked Chloe how the big presentation went, the one Rachel had apparently been leading. Chloe looked confused for a second before catching on. She glanced at me then at Rachel, and I could see her making a decision. Chloe said the presentation went well but clarified that their boss had delivered it, with Rachel and the team providing support. Ruth looked confused and said that wasn't how Rachel had described it. I jumped in because I'm messy like that and asked Chloe about Rachel's promotion. Poor Chloe looked so uncomfortable. Caught between loyalty to a coworker and not wanting to lie to an entire family, she fidgeted with her napkin and said something vague about company restructuring. Rachel interrupted with this fake laugh and tried changing the subject to sports or whatever, but her brother wasn't having it. He asked Chloe point blank what Rachel's current title was. The silence that followed was like that moment when you drop something in a public bathroom. Everyone hears it. No one wants to acknowledge it. Chloe looked at Rachel, who was silently pleading with her eyes, then at me. I nodded slightly. She cleared her throat and said that Rachel was an administrative assistant in the marketing department. The silence. Ruth put down her fork slowly. Her grandpa made this little hump sound. Kyle muttered something that sounded suspiciously like, I knew it. Rachel immediately went into damage control mode, saying Chloe was confused, that she had multiple roles, that it was complicated. But the dam had broken. Her family started asking specific questions that she couldn't weasel out of. When did you get promoted? She hadn't. Why did you say you had a team? She didn't. What about that corner office you mentioned? Also fictional. With each question, Rachel's stories unraveled more. She kept looking at me like this was somehow my fault, which just made me more determined to let everything come out. Tom, bless his heart, tried to smooth things over. He suggested we all have some cake and talk about happier things. As he went to the kitchen to get it, Kyle asked me directly about the restaurant I'd mentioned earlier. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and told them everything. How Rachel had invited me to meet her friends, how she'd belittled me throughout dinner, how she dumped me in front of everyone and walked out, leaving me with a $347 bill I could barely afford. Rachel tried interrupting several times, but her mom shut her down with this look I'd never seen before. Pure disappointment. Rachel's defense, that I was exaggerating and playing victim, that I had embarrassed her in front of her colleagues by not fitting in, that leaving me with the bill was teaching me financial responsibility. Her grandpa actually snorted at that last one. Chloe, who had been quiet through most of this, finally spoke up. She confirmed my story, adding that she'd heard Rachel bragging to coworkers about how she'd put me in my place. She even pulled out her phone and showed texts from Paula, receipts, y'all, discussing what had happened. Tom came back in with the cake just as Rachel was trying to paint herself as the victim. He set it down and asked what he'd missed. No one spoke for a moment. Then Rachel's mom said, very quietly, that they needed to have a family discussion about honesty. Rachel exploded, like full-on temper tantrum. She accused me of turning her family against her, called Chloe a traitor, and said everyone was just jealous of her success. What success? She knocked over her water glass, pointed at me, and yelled that a guy like me should be grateful she even bothered with me. Her dad gasped. Her grandpa said something that I'm pretty sure was old people swearing. Her brother just shook his head like he wasn't even surprised. I stayed calm somehow and said that the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing who she really was. Rachel stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Tom's decorative plates fell off the wall and cracked. The aftermath was weirdly peaceful. Tom apologized to me like 50 times. Ruth looked tired and sad. Kyle helped clean up the spilled water. Chloe apologized for her part in the awkwardness but said she couldn't stand by while Rachel lied to everyone. Then the strangest thing happened. Instead of asking me to leave, they insisted I stay for cake. We all sat there. Rachel's ex-boyfriend, her coworker, and her family, eating birthday cake without the birthday girl. In any other situation, it would have been the most awkward thing ever. But somehow, it wasn't. After cake, I helped Tom clean up in the kitchen. He kept apologizing and saying he had no idea Rachel had been lying about so much. He seemed genuinely heartbroken, not just about what she'd done to me, but about who his daughter had become. I felt bad for him tbh. No parent wants to realize their kid is, well, kind of terrible. He asked me quietly if there had been signs before. And I admitted that looking back, there were red flags I'd ignored because I wanted to believe the best about her. When I was getting ready to leave, Rachel's mom pulled me aside. She thanked me for my honesty and apologized for what her daughter had done. She seemed so defeated, like she was trying to figure out where they'd gone wrong in raising her. I assured her it wasn't their fault. Rachel had made her own choices. Chloe offered to walk me to my car, probably sensing I needed a moment to process everything. As we walked down the driveway, she mentioned that Rachel had been having problems at work for months, taking credit for other people's ideas, lying about her contributions, even faking emails from clients. She was actually on her final warning before potential termination. Suddenly, Rachel's desperate need to appear successful made a twisted kind of sense. Her whole identity was built on this fake image of success and status. When I thought about it that way, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. I thanked Chloe for backing me up and drove home in a weird state of emotional exhaustion mixed with relief, like when you finally take off uncomfortable shoes at the end of the day. Sorry for the weird analogy, but y'all know what I mean. When I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Victor wanting updates. I was about to call him back when my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. You've ruined everything. This isn't over. I didn't respond, just blocked her number, and made myself some tea. I should have been scared or upset, but honestly, I just felt tired and maybe a little proud of myself for standing up to her. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But this morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls from Rachel's dad, her brother, Chloe, and several numbers I didn't recognize. Something had happened overnight. And based on the increasingly frantic voicemails, Rachel had completely lost it. Last update, I'm finally ready to explain about those 13 missed calls. Thanks for being patient while I processed everything that happened. Also sorry for the delay. My laptop decided to do a surprise 4-hour update right when I sat down to write this. So where were we? I woke up Sunday morning after the birthday dinner disaster to find my phone blowing up with calls from Rachel's family and Chloe. At first, I legit thought someone had died or something. My stomach did that awful dropping thing as I scrolled through the notifications. 5 missed calls from Tom, 3 from Kyle, 2 from Chloe, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. I called Tom back first because he seemed the most worried based on his voicemails, which were just variations of Sebastian. Please call me as soon as you can. He picked up on the first ring sounding exhausted. Apparently, after Rachel stormed out of the birthday dinner, she'd gone on a complete bender. She'd shown up at her ex-boyfriend's apartment at, 2 a.m. drunk and ranting about how I'd ruined her life. The ex, who I didn't even know existed tbh, was understandably freaked out and called Kyle, who had to go pick her up. But that wasn't all. Rachel had also spent the night sending unhinged messages to practically everyone we knew. She'd texted Chloe threatening to ruin her at work. Lol, good luck with that when you're about to get fired. She'd posted this long rambling status on Facebook about how she was surrounded by snakes, and people would regret betraying her. Most concerning was that she'd posted my address in a private message to her friend Paula, saying she was going to make me pay for humiliating her. Paula, who apparently has some moral compass, immediately called Tom and forwarded the message, which is why he was trying so desperately to reach me. I was sitting on my couch in my ratty old pajamas, hair still in yesterday's messy bun, trying to process all this information while Tom apologized approximately 50 times for his daughter's behavior. I should have been scared, I guess. But honestly, I just felt tired. Like, when your phone is stuck at 1% battery for hours, just waiting for it to finally die so you can charge it and move on. Tom insisted on coming over just to make sure I was okay, which was super sweet, but also made me panic clean my apartment. Nothing motivates tidying up like knowing someone's dad is about to see your living space. Am I right? I was literally throwing dirty laundry into my closet and scrubbing dried toothpaste off the bathroom sink when my doorbell rang. It wasn't just Tom. Kyle was with him too. They brought coffee and those little pastries from the bakery near their house, which, not gonna lie, might be what I miss most about being with Rachel. We sat at my tiny kitchen table with the wobbly leg that I've been meaning to fix for months, and they filled me in on the Rachel situation. According to Kyle, this wasn't the first time Rachel had lied about her life. In college, she'd apparently told everyone she was on the softball team when she'd actually been cut during tryouts. She'd once claimed to be talking to a popular guy who had no idea who she was. There was a whole pattern of her creating this fictional version of herself that was more successful, more popular, more everything. As they were talking, my phone kept buzzing with texts from friends who'd seen Rachel's social media meltdown. Victor was freaking out, wanting to come over with his girlfriend who does kickboxing just in case. He watches too many crime shows, I swear. My group chat was blowing up with confused messages about the dramatic subtweets Rachel was posting. That's when my doorbell rang again. I literally froze, wondering if it was Rachel. Kyle peeked through the blinds and let out a long breath. It was Chloe. Apparently, Rachel had been blowing up her phone all morning too, and Chloe wanted to warn me in person since Rachel had mentioned paying me a visit. So there we all were, me, Rachel's dad, her brother, and her coworker, sitting in my living room on a Sunday morning, trying to figure out what to do about this woman-child throwing a tantrum because she got caught in her lies. If it wasn't so stressful, it would have been hilarious. Like, imagine explaining this situation to someone who wasn't there. Chloe mentioned that their boss had already gotten wind of Rachel's social media tirade. Someone had screenshotted and forwarded it. So Monday at work was going to be interesting. Kyle was worried Rachel might do something stupid if she lost her job on top of everything else. That's when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was the building manager, looking super awkward. Apparently, Rachel had been downstairs making a scene in the lobby, demanding to be led up to my apartment. The manager had refused, bless him, and threatened to call the police, at which point Rachel had stormed off, but not before yelling that I was a lying bastard loud enough for the entire first floor to hear. Tom looked devastated. He kept apologizing and saying he didn't know where they went wrong with her. I felt terrible for him. Imagine realizing your adult daughter is basically a walking red flag. Kyle was more practical, suggesting I document everything just in case Rachel's behavior escalated. We were all sitting there trying to figure out what to do when my phone buzzed with a notification. Rachel had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against my better judgment and everyone in the room telling me not to look, I opened it. It was a photo of me from early in our relationship, sleeping on her couch with my mouth open, captioned, "Mr. Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect. A guy like you should be grateful anyone took pictures of you at all." Like, that was her big revenge? A slightly unflattering photo from 2 years ago? I actually laughed out loud, which wasn't the reaction Tom was expecting. But honestly, if that was the worst she could do, I was going to be fine. Just as we were discussing next steps, there was a loud pounding on my door. We all jumped. Then we heard Rachel's voice, slurring slightly. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Chloe immediately stood up like she was going to confront Rachel, which was sweet, but unnecessary. I was already calling the building security guard, perks of a slightly more expensive apartment building. Rachel kept pounding and yelling, and I could hear my neighbor's door open as she came out to see what the commotion was about. By the time security arrived, Rachel had moved on to kicking the door. The security guard didn't mess around. He told Rachel to leave or he'd call the police. There was some back and forth that I couldn't quite make out, then silence. The guard knocked gently and let me know Rachel had left the building but was still in the parking lot, possibly waiting. Tom was mortified. He insisted on going down to deal with his daughter himself. And honestly, I was happy to let him. He was so upset that Ruth, Rachel's mom, had to come pick them both up. The whole situation was just sad. After they left, Chloe and I sat on my couch in stunned silence for a bit. She finally broke it by asking if I had any alcohol, which felt like the appropriate response to the morning we'd had. We split a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, and this definitely counted. By the time Chloe left, it was late afternoon, and I was emotionally exhausted. Victor came over and stayed the night just in case Rachel decided to make a return appearance. She didn't. Thankfully. We ordered pizza, watched bad reality TV, and tried to process the absolute soap opera my life had become. The next few weeks were, well, an adjustment. Rachel got fired from her job after failing to show up for 3 days and sending inappropriate emails to several coworkers. She moved back in with her parents temporarily, which I only know because Kyle and I have kept in touch. He's actually pretty cool. We get coffee sometimes. Rachel tried to contact me a few more times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to tearful to weirdly nostalgic. I saved them all just in case, but never responded. She created a few fake Instagram accounts to message me, but they were so obviously her, who else would write "you're making a big mistake with that spelling error," that I just blocked them instantly. The weirdest part was running into her at Target about a month later. I was in the home section looking at shower curtains, and suddenly there she was, holding a pack of socks and looking like she hadn't slept in days. We made eye contact, and for a second, I thought she might cause a scene. Instead, she just turned around and walked away, leaving her shopping basket right there in the aisle. That was 3 months ago now. Rachel eventually moved to her aunt's place in another state, according to Tom, who still sends me holiday cards, which is sweet, but awkward. Her social media has gone suspiciously quiet. Kyle thinks her parents finally cut her off financially until she gets therapy. As for me, I'm doing pretty good, actually. My apartment finally feels like mine again now that I've rearranged the furniture and replaced the stuff that reminded me of Rachel. The strangest outcome of all this might be my unexpected friendship with Chloe. We're not dating or anything, though Victor keeps trying to make that happen. But we grab lunch sometimes and text out stupid TikTok videos. It's nice having someone who witnessed the whole Rachel saga and understands why I now have trust issues the size of Texas. Looking back at everything, I'm not angry anymore. Well, not just angry. I'm also weirdly grateful. Not for dating Rachel. Definitely not that. But for finding out who she really was before things went further. Imagine if I'd moved in with her or something? Shudder.